Hey guys, welcome back to First and 10, the NFL football podcast over here on Clueless Gamers. As always, I'm your host, Pete, joined in a second by my co host, Brian. Welcome in. It is so great once again to be gathered here on this lovely Thursday night to be talking some NFL football as we look forward to the week 7 of the NFL season here in 2022. A lot has happened. There's been a lot of, I feel like this has been the most topsy-turvy I can remember for the beginning of a league year. There's been, oh God, my picks have taken a beating. It's been a rough year. And with that, I'll welcome in my co-host, Brian. Brian, how are you? Are your picks as equally rough as mine?
Well, I'd be interested to know, like, what the week by week breakdown is. But one thing I do recall the last show we did when we did all the picks, that was the best week I had. I think I might have gone like 14-2
Yeah,
or
you did good.
13-3.
You did really good.
So I know that week, which was probably about 3 weeks ago or so, I'd say maybe week 4. Since then, it's been probably closer to 500. I mean, what we're really finding out about this league, if we haven't already in recent years, is it's just so
It's a
unpredictable. And
mess.
it's such a week to week league where you see a team play great one week and then you think you haven't figured out. Then the next week they don't play well at all. And that's just the entire league, right? It's filled with a lot of mediocre teams, a lot of teams that are kind of hovering around
Yeah.
500. And I mean, if nothing else, it makes for an interesting season.
I think that's a great point. It's a lot of teams hovering around 500, but it's particular teams that are hanging around 500 that we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. Some surprise teams. I feel like the most surprised I've been with a lot of teams, i.e., the Jets, the Giants. At the moment, it doesn't look great, but the way that the Dolphins kicked off this season, like the Falcons. I mean, there's been a lot of random teams that I expected to be okay to really bad. And the fact that a lot of these teams have winning records and some of the best records in the league is crazy. And we're going to get into all of
Yeah.
that stuff because it's been an insane season. Bry, let's jump back to week 6 as we always do. Okay, we've missed a couple weeks here. We got some catching up on some general storylines that we want to talk about. And I'm going to start off hometown. I'm sure you're going to go there first as well. Let's talk about the Los Angeles Rams. I'm a Rams fan. If you didn't know, I'm wearing the hat. It's been, listen, it's been a great year. I can't say it hasn't been because we won the Super Bowl in the 2022 calendar year, right? Yes, that was last
Yeah.
season, but it happened this February. So I can't be upset. But if we're taking it just as, nothing counts from last season, right? If we're taking it as this season, it's been rough. Now, have I been through many, many way worse seasons as a Rams fan? Absolutely. This is nothing. But considering the expectations that many people had, not me, and you know that, but many people had, especially in the media, about what this team is going to be. Obviously, they're the defending Super Bowl champs. It's been nothing short of, The Walking Dead, Brian. I mean, we're talking about one of the most injured teams in the league. And that's not to make excuses. There's been a lot of underperforming schemes, coaching, players, moments, all that stuff. But let's just look at the offensive line of the Los Angeles Rams. We just lost our starting left tackle, one of the only two starting offensive linemen that started every game this season up until last week, in Joseph Noteboom. He's out for the season. He tears his Achilles. It did not look good on the field. The reports after the game were saying it kind of looks like the Achilles. Well, that was confirmed on Monday. Worst nightmare. The only other starting offensive lineman to start in week 1 that's played every game is Rob Havenstein at right tackle. He's pretty much the only carryover from previous years. He's one of the top, pro football focused right tackles. He's a really solid right tackle. He's a really good right tackle, right? Everything else, you're going to be on your second left tackle now to start next week here. And that's going to be, after the bye week, because they're on the bye week here in week 7. In Alaric Jackson, who had some nice moments. He did against the Carolina Panthers. He's being graded high for last week. We'll see how that goes going forward when really teams are preparing for him and the best pass rushers there, right? Then we're looking at a second string left guard with all the injuries that have happened concussion wise with David Edwards. Hope to get him back in a few weeks, but he had a concussion, went out, came back, immediately got a concussion in about a quarter and a half, and that was a couple weeks ago. So that doesn't look good. You lost Brian Allen, your starting center, a few weeks ago. Then you lost his backup, Coleman Shelton. And now you're on some undrafted rookie, I think Kalani or something like that. His name is Coline, something like that. Third string center. You're on your fifth string right guard that's going on right now. I mean, this is stuff that like you see once in a blue moon, but I can't recall it like this as a Rams fan. I mean, Bry, we're just that off the top. Where are you at with the Rams? Where are you at with the game with the Panthers last week? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm still getting over the fifth string right guard. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard of such a thing,
It's
but
crazy.
yeah, clearly, they've taken a beating. I mean, obviously, I'm not watching every play of every game like you. I mean, the game last week was not exactly one that's going to make
It's
you
not a barn
too
burner.
excited. Playing a Carolina team that was starting PJ Walker at quarterback, and early on, even the Rams couldn't really get their offense going. I mean, they got it going late, won a game that obviously they had to
They
win. You
had to
thought
win.
would win handily.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But, when I've watched this team, what I've found, aside from all the offensive line issues, is I'm seeing an offense that's just too predictable. Where,
Fair.
most games, Stafford is targeting Cup, he's targeting Higby, and it's like, who else is out there?
That's
Now,
it.
last game, Allen Robinson got a little bit involved, got
Ben
in the end
Skoranek
zone.
got a touchdown, his first career touchdown, which was nice.
Skoranek too, but you have to have more options in the passing game.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, which I'll get back to you on with this running back situation. I mean, you got
Yeah.
a talented running back that was a pretty high pick in Cam Akers, and I guess he's on the trading block at
Yep.
this point. I mean, clearly he's not getting carries. It's not exactly like they have a deep backfield to work with, but it seems like there's a lot of issues going on there.
Yeah, so to touch on that, obviously I'm not in the locker room. I can't tell all the details that even Ram insiders have, but I follow a lot, right? And so getting the picture, it seems that this has been a long running thing, really dating back to the offseason, right? Cam Akers, high draft pick, second round draft pick. He kind of glides with his movements, right? Like he looked like he can be a smooth runner at times, can be dominant. Before he got hurt, he really looked like he was going to be the next big thing for the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams, who have a history of great franchise running backs dating decades ago, right? Even back to Eric Dickerson. And it looked like there
Mhm.
could be potential that he was there, right? Darrell Henderson was the starter. He was kind of on the outs. It was Cam Akers' show. Well, now the roles have been reversed, right? And now you have a situation where in the offseason, there was rumblings going on Rams Twitter and everything else, that there was reports that Cam Akers might have been feeling himself a little bit, might have been getting a little bit too cocky for kind of his means of currently where he was in the NFL, right? He hadn't accomplished too much. Then you come into the season, and I think really week one did him in. They get trounced by the Buffalo Bills. But the
Mhm.
amount of times that showed up on film, and you saw it on Twitter, you could see it on YouTube, that he was missing or unwilling to even participate in blocking assignments, pass blocking assignments, I think that really put a sour taste in Sean McVay's mouth. And then you look at McVay, listen, he does a lot of great things as a coach, right? And as a personnel person and managing people, but he has been known, see the Jared Goff situation, sometimes being a little bit testy, gets a little bit uncomfortable with certain players when they're not doing what he expects. And he even openly admitted when everything went down that he didn't handle it the way he should have with Jared Goff. We saw how that ended. It was very ugly. And we're kind of getting to a lesser degree, because it's not a quarterback, a situation here with Cam Akers. They tried to work some things out. They tried to get him the ball. He was blocking a little bit more. But Bride, they liked this kid coming off the IR. They liked him in the offseason in Kyron Williams. They drafted him. He's a rookie. They really like this kid. There's a lot of buzz around him. Darrell Henderson has been running hard. He's been, knock on wood, solving a lot of his fumble issues. They've liked what they've had there in some of the pieces. They've been using Skoranek out of the backfield at fullback, and ultimately it led to a situation where Cam Akers, if he wasn't going to fit with the scheme and him and McVay weren't getting along, he's now on the trading block. Yes, there's rumors of him, a swap for Melvin Gordon with the Broncos. I've been seeing a lot of that kind of buzz on Twitter as well, because Melvin Gordon is very unhappy in his current situation.
Yeah.
But it's not great right now. It's not a great situation. Thank God. Normally you don't want this early of a bye, but for this team with everything going on, it was a godsend.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you said it right. This is exactly what you need is a week off, a week to try to get some guys back in the lineup. And
Yeah.
who do they have coming up after the bye?
After the bye, I think we have is either San Fran or Tampa. I think we have coming up. It might be San Fran. I know we got the Cardinals coming up in the rotation. I'm gonna look. It's San Fran. It's San Fran,
Okay.
and then I think then it might be Tampa the week after, right? Let me see. Yeah, then it's Tampa the week after. So so you got a gauntlet coming, right? Like
Yeah.
there'll be some easy games here and there, right? If you could count them as easy, the Falcons, the Panthers. I mean, they won both those games. We'll talk more about the Falcons in a little bit, but it's not going to get easy. We knew this schedule was one of the hardest in the league coming into the season. What do you expect? You're the Super Bowl champs, and the injuries not to just the offensive line, but to the secondary, the linebacking crew. There's been injuries on the defensive line. I mean, they are banged up everywhere, and they're supposed to get. I think I saw 5 or 6 people back off IR or off at least some kind of injury after the bye. Maybe 3 or 4 more after that. This team just needs to get healthy. They'll probably make some low-level move at the deadline. I'm thinking a guard or a center, something at least for depth, even if it's not a splash name. And while the OBJ situation looks less and less likely, it's still possible, right? There's Bills rumors, there's Kansas City rumors. Can the Rams still have a shot? Absolutely. But as you touched on to start this whole thing, Stafford needs protection, and he also just needs to start trusting people other than Cooper Kupp. We know Cooper Kupp's the GOAT right now, but he can't have literally 19 targets a game. I mean,
Right.
you just can't keep that up. You see how exhausted he is at the end of games, and you just need to have more variety. I mean, every Rams fan knows, oh, it's 3rd and 8. Oh, it's 3rd and 13. What's going to happen? A wide receiver screen to Cooper Kupp. I mean, you know exactly what's coming. Like, and it's only a credit to him. He made a great play last week that he got the first down just because of him and his willpower. That's not what you should be doing. It's not creative. It's stale. And ultimately, it's the situation that they're in because of injuries. And they'll have to fix that on the fly in a team in San Francisco that they have not beaten in 40 years in the regular season. So we'll see.
Certainly, another weapon would be nice. Like you think back to last year, I know it wasn't a huge role, but having like Deshaun Jackson
Yeah, who's
helped
a
give
Raven
them
now.
a deep threat, right? Yeah, he just signed,
He did.
and like you said,
He was a deep threat, and then after about 3 or 4 games, he gave up and was unhappy with his role. And that
yeah,
brings into the question of, they're using Tutu Atwell a little bit more. I would like to see a little bit more of that. They spent a 2nd-round draft pick on him. Brandon Powell has been getting involved in some of the run game and the short pass game. They need speed, Bri, and they got to use their guys, and they got to protect to throw the ball down the field. Remember, this team is also one of the worst, bottom 3 in rushing in the entire league. That also
mm,
needs to be fixed. So there's a lot of issues going on right now. But hey, they got the win. They pulled it out against the lifeless Panthers, and man, I would have been ringing alarm bells over here because that game was looking bad at half, Bry. So I'm glad that they turned it around.
yeah, no question. They needed a win, but I think we should segue and talk a little bit about the local teams, not just the Jets, but how
I knew
about
you
New
wanted
York
to.
football as a
I
whole?
know.
Because this is the 3rd year that we've been doing this show, and the
Crazy.
first 2 years, honestly, it wasn't even worth talking about the New
No, we
York
didn't
teams.
a
I
lot
feel
of the
like
time.
most of the time, yeah, we just like kind of glossed over them because what was there to dissect? They were two of the most miserable teams in the entire league,
Yeah.
and now we actually have teams that are legitimately winning games. I mean, the Giants at 5-1, the Jets at 4-2. I really don't think you can say enough what they've done. And let's start with the Jets because I
Yeah,
think the game
let's.
this past Sunday is the game that really elevates them to a position of now you need to start taking them a little bit seriously
Right.
because it's one thing to win in Pittsburgh, with Mitch Trubisky and the quarterback situation
Yeah.
that was going on there, and then beating up on a Miami team that started Teddy Bridgewater and then he was knocked out of the
Michael
game.
Thompson.
So impressive win, absolutely. But when you go to Lambeau and take down Rodgers and beat up the Packers, that's a game that really gets your attention. And the way the Jets did it started slow offensively. I mean, there was not much scoring early in this game. Jets offense really didn't get it going, but the impressive part to me was the defense. And I know this Packer offense is not what it used to be, and Rodgers does not have great weapons to throw to, but they did not look good at all. And I think it was a big credit to Robert Saleh and developing this defense, which looks like it's ready to go now. And the Jets, they're a confident group right now. You know, there's a lot of good young talent. There's the Elijah Moore situation to deal with, which is the one negative. And you know, there was news today about him asking for a trade. That's kind of another story. Let's
Yeah.
focus on the positives. To see all the talent kind of coming through both sides of the ball. It's really been impressive, and the league that we talked about being wide open. Why not the Jets to be a potential sneaky team getting into the playoffs this year?
No, I think it's well said. I'm very happy for you. I'm happy for Dylan, who's obviously known on this channel. He's a resident Jets fan, diehard. You guys are. I'm not at the point yet of taking them seriously. I want to see a little bit more. I am impressed so far, but just like the Giants, I need to see a little bit more because there's been so many hapless years. You need to prove to me that you're just not going to collapse and go on like a 7-game losing streak. Like I mean that has been New York football. And so like that has to be proven to me because listen, the defense 100% deserves the credit. Anytime you could shut Rodgers down no matter what team he has, it's extremely impressive, especially to do it in Lambeau, right? And I've been impressed by this defense led by maybe your young defensive rookie of the year candidate in Sauce Gardner and Ahmad Gardner.
Mhm.
Looking fantastic. We'll talk about him in a second. But let's look at your offense. And let's be honest, right? Hopefully they could solve the Elijah Moore situation because I really love that kid. I love the weapons that you guys have over there. I don't want you to start losing pieces. I really love what Joe Douglas has built. But if we look at it from a statistic standpoint, right? If you watch the game, it was slow moving, and then you could really see the Jets take control, right? And you could only do, especially offensively, what the game dictates, right? I'm not saying for them to go crazy. I'm not just trying to be a, hey man, look at the box score kind of guy. But let's be serious. Zach Wilson throws for what? 110 yards, no touchdowns, right? I think the more alarming stat is here because they were both bad on both sides. Green Bay was 4 of 16, 25% on third down. The Jets were 1 of 11. I mean, that's not in other games, that's not going to get it done. And when you're only passing for 179, well, 99 total yards for the Jets, 179 yards rushing made it feel very much like those 2009, 2010 teams. I need more offensively. I like what this defense has been doing, but with all those weapons there, I need Zach Wilson. I understand he's coming back off an injury and he's settling in, but I need to know why he was taken second overall. I need to see more growth there. To me, throwing for 110 yards, that's good for this game. That's not going to be good for most games. And so there needs to be more development there. And that's what I'm hesitant on. I'm the same way with Daniel Jones in New York with the Giants, and we'll get to that in a minute. But there
Mhm.
has to be more from the QB because at the end of the day, this is a QB league. That is what happens, right? It's a very basic, simple point, but it's 100% true every single time. You almost 99.9% of the time, I will say, to win games in this league and to especially go far in the playoffs, you need a competent to great quarterback. And that's where I'm holding off right now. But all the props to the Jets right now, all the props to Sauce and the defense. I mean, I love the bravado, the confidence. It's giving me very Revis Island kind of flashbacks. And just kind of the way he portrays himself. I didn't even mind the cheesehead thing. I thought that, who cares? To talk your talk, right? You're allowed to do that while you're playing the way you are. And if that confidence helps him to keep growing as a player, I'm all for it.
Yeah. A couple guys to highlight too, one on each side of the ball that I think deserve praise. Quinnen Williams on the defensive
Absolutely.
line, a first round pick who really kind of took a while to into his own, but this year has just been a beast. And then in the backfield, the rookie Brees Hall is really starting to show what he can
Yes.
do. Early on, it was more of a split. Michael Carter coming off a nice rookie season, wanted to get him work, kind of ease Brees Hall in, but he's kind of taken over now, and we're seeing the all around skills. You
Well,
have a running back who can catch the ball, make big plays like we've seen him. He's a keeper, and he's going to be a big weapon for the Jets.
yeah, and I totally agree. I really love a lot of the offensive pieces. I can't say that about the Packers right now, right? Because we look at the other side, and I highlighted this earlier. I kind of teased it a little bit. There's a lot of perennial powers in the NFL right now. The Rams in the last few years are one of them that we just talked about. The Packers are another. Here's another 500 team who's 2 games out of first place in their division, something that's unheard of. I understand it's only after week 6. We're not completely panicking, but this is not a position yet that Matt LaFleur has been put in as head coach yet, right? And then this is Aaron Bleepin Rodgers, as a lot of people say, right? Or the back-to-back MVP. I don't care who is there. If it's not me and you on the field and they're actual NFL players, I expect you to be better than this. And this is the problem that I've had with Rodgers that we've talked about really since this podcast has started, is that this is a guy who is uber talented, supremely, maybe the most pound for pound talented QB we've ever seen in league history.
Agreed.
But how much does he care? How much does he care? That's where it lies. Because listen, this guy, instead of going to California like a lot of people do, a lot of NFL players do, I get it. But instead of doing that all summer, instead of complaining about contract issues, you know what he could have done? Took a lot of these young rookies, a lot of these guys he's not familiar with, out to a local high school, and he could have been throwing with them even off team time to establish better chemistry, to understand each other's cadences, and this offense could be looking a lot better. And that's the problem. And then you couple that with his passive aggressiveness during the season. If a rookie or a young guy makes a mistake, right? They're done for the game. He doesn't look back at them. They're done unless it's garbage time. That is not the way to develop an offense, develop chemistry, to have any kind of relationship with your teammates, at least on the field. I'm not saying to be buddies off the field. That does help. But on the field. And this is my problem with the Packers. And that defense is certainly underperformed. There's no question. I understand they've had some injuries. But even the running backs don't look good. Even Aaron Jones has not been Aaron Jones. Or A.J. Dillon has not been A.J. Dillon. We're seeing right now Devontae is missing Rodgers. And Rodgers is certainly missing Devontae. And not all divorces work out for even one side. Sometimes they don't work out for either side. I'm very concerned about the Packers right now, Bri. I mean, you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think you have to be concerned when you've watched them play. Even in a couple of their wins, like the Tampa Bay game stands out. They only scored 14 points,
Yeah.
and I mean they got the win. But watching the team game in game out this year, the offense just has not been functioning like a typical Aaron Rodgers offense. And I would go as far to say as Rodgers misses Adams more than Adams misses
Yeah,
Rodgers,
for sure.
because Devontae has still had a few good games there with the Raiders and still has a better than competent, I would say, quarterback with Derek Carr.
Yeah.
But Rodgers is really just searching right now. And you talked about some of the miscommunication with the receivers, and that goes back to preseason where I heard him in a post game basically throwing his receivers under the bus,
That's
saying
what he
like
always
this
does.
guy's running the wrong route.
Yep.
And that's the typical Rodgers kind of stuff, right? Like grumbling, and that's kind of who he's become, I feel like, in the later years of his career. Now, in the end, I think the Packers will be okay. I think they'll figure it out. I don't necessarily think it'll be Super Bowl caliber,
No.
but I just believe in Rodgers too much that I would say by the end of the season, this rookie Daubs becomes a serviceable receiver. Alan Lazard maybe figures it out. Tunyon, the tight end, at least he did have
Yeah.
10 catches
For
in the last
once.
game. So is that good that in the end he'll figure it out? But right now, it does look very suspect, and it leaves you wondering, how good this Packer team. Last year, they looked like the best team in the league. They get to the playoffs, they get shut down by that 49ers
The
defense.
usual.
So,
Yep.
I mean, without Devontae Adams, you had to figure this was coming. Like, you take away that kind of weapon, that guy was so trusted with Rodgers. He just looked his way all the time. Not having him, the
I
game
mean,
changer. Like when I
wasn't the back shoulder throw? Wasn't it like not only their signature move, wasn't it unstoppable? I mean, like
It was.
you knew it was coming, and no defensive back could stop it.
When I saw that they made that trade, like there's few times where I'm like legitimately shocked, but when I
Yeah.
saw that trade to the Raiders, I'm like, what? Like, that really caught me by surprise.
But listen, you could. I'm not laying it all at the feet of Aaron Rodgers, right? Devontae, Derek Carr, college roommates, their friends. But some of that was Rodgers' fault. If he didn't have all the contract issues, if he wasn't constantly complaining, if he secured more of his future, Devontae would have signed an extension there, and that trade would have never happened. And you know what? If they communicated a little bit more and Rodgers reached out a little bit more, and maybe they were a little bit more friends, so they knew what was going on in their personal lives and in their contracts and all that stuff, that never happens. So some of that, even if you want to put a majority of that, that's also on Rodgers. And that has become the growing trend where almost like, is he not becoming like Brett Favre in the later years of his career? I mean, it feels very like that. Every year, I'll retire. I won't retire. I don't know if I want to play anymore. And being outspoken and not being a team guy. That's what it
Yeah.
feels like. And right now, out of all the 3-3 teams that are normally the perennial superpowers, I think I'm the most concerned about the Packers. I really don't like what's going on here. And do I think they're going to miss the playoffs? No. But I don't know if they're going to win this division, Bry. Like, I really don't. And like, I think we both picked them to win the division. I'm really second guessing that choice right now. Not just because the Vikings have a 2-game lead, but I mean, they just don't look competent. Like, it just doesn't look like when push comes to shove and they play even the solid teams. Or what about the great teams? I don't think they're going to be able to hack it. I just don't think they're going to. So we'll have to keep more an eye out as that unfolds. But as we also touched on, let's get to the other New York team, right? Let's give a little bit of love to the New York Giants. New York Football Giants. There's a lot of listeners out there that are New York Football Giants fans, a few friends of ours as well, right? And so I hope you're listening. They knocked down the Ravens, which is a team we'll talk about in a second as well as one of those 3-3 former superpowers. They knock them off 24-20, right? The Giants pull this off. Another fourth quarter comeback. Doing it, I would say once again, Daniel Jones not lighting the skies up. He's not lighting your hair on fire, blowing back your eyebrows, but he's playing smart football. And just like the Jets, they're running the ball. They're playing really good defense. And they're most importantly, especially with the Giants, they're taking advantage of other teams' mistakes. Sometimes they cause them by putting pressure on the other team, on the opponent. And sometimes the other team just kind of implodes. And the Giants, to their credit, are taking advantage of every situation. They're not committing crazy amount of penalties. They are making use of all the turnovers they get. They're limiting their own turnovers. And they are playing smart football under new head coach Brian Daboll. I'm very impressed. I thought they would be improved. I didn't think it'd be like this fast. I mean, Brian, what have you thought about the Giants?
Yeah, look, I was very down on this team coming into the year.
Me too.
I just thought the idea of the constant shuffling with coaches, that they just were going to continue to kind of spiral. I proven dead wrong. I mean, you have to say the job that Brian Daboll has done has been nothing short of exceptional. I mean, the guy has come in and completely changed the culture to a team that was consistently finding ways to lose to now a team that's finding ways to win.
Right?
And look, this roster is not all that talented,
It
let's
really
be
isn't.
honest. And I mean, for them to be 5-1 right now, to me, what it comes down to is this new coaching staff getting the most out of the roster.
Yeah.
And Daniel Jones is not a very good quarterback, as we know.
No, we know
But
that.
what we're seeing is him being used to his strengths, something that was
Absolutely.
not happening under the Joe Judges and Pat Shermer and all these previous coaches
Ben
when the team just
McAdoo.
looked, yeah, they look completely lost. Now we're seeing, even though the Giants don't have a great quarterback, have a receiver group that can even name a wide receiver. I mean,
Right?
and they're getting the job done. Like Daniel Jones, he's using his legs. I think that's his best asset. As you said, running the ball and getting this year out of Saquon Barkley has been huge.
Finally.
He's just right. and it's a bad time finally coming off the injury. It just seems like it's his time right now. But when it comes down to the Giants, to me, more than anything, is how much coaching has helped him. Not just at the head coach. I think the defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, has been a
Absolutely.
tremendous
Absolutely.
addition for this staff. We saw what he did in Baltimore year in, year out. They consistently had very good defenses. You're seeing them have an aggressiveness, a toughness on defense that we
Hmm.
have not seen in years. And that, when you think about the Giants when they've been at their best, it's that style of
Oh
defense.
yeah.
And I think that's back now. And with Martindale there and what Dayball's doing, working with Jones, and you got Barkley humming, look, there's a lot to like here.
I think you summed it up well, and I just want to reiterate that coaching matters in the NFL. It matters so much. And this is the latest and greatest example. This team, as you said, they're not that talented. Okay. Honestly, in some of these games, Bry, they don't really have any business winning. If you look at the box score, if you even watch most of the game until there's that turning point, flashpoint moment, they don't have any business winning these games. I mean, for God's sakes, their losses to who? Cooper Rush, right? Cooper Rush had a
Yeah.
comeback in New York, right? So you could see the level that this team can sometimes not reach. But man, when they play, they are playing smart, sound football. And the thing that I will say the most to close out the Giants at the moment, there's belief. You can see it on the sideline. Like the way that, especially in the London game when that happened a couple weeks ago, you can see what Dayball means to those players, how they are buying in. They believe what is happening. And they are understanding, like you could see it on the field that whatever he's teaching them in practice and in film study, and he's telling them, it's not going one ear and out the other. They're going, oh, it's clicking for the first time with a head coach because they've had so many. Oh, that's why he's asking me to do that because this happened and it worked. And that is what great coaching does. And I'm not shocked in the least. I said Brian Daboll was a great hire. I was just concerned with this roster. I didn't think the Giants would be good. And what he is doing right now, he is by and far through 6 weeks, in my opinion, he's the leading candidate for coach of the year by and far. I mean, it's not even remotely close what's going on right now. And I'm really happy to see some New York football actually prospering. It's nice.
Yeah, I think your point on Dable is absolutely correct. And I think you go back to week one because I think that's what really set the tone for this new regime when he
Absolutely.
went for that 2 point conversion at the
Yep.
end of the game to win it. That really sent a message, I believe, in this team. And I think that was really a huge rallying moment for this team. That, instead of Joe Judge, who would punt in situations where it was like, why didn't we go for it? You had a coach that believed in his players in his first game coaching. That sent a huge message. And I think that really gave this team a ton of confidence.
It's like our famous Joe Judge play that we loved, right? Remember, it was third down. Remember what he did there? Like, you can't even picture a Brian Dayball team doing that right now. And
No.
that's the difference. On the
Yeah.
other side, real quick, the Baltimore Ravens are the other team, right? They're another one of these teams, the Rams, the Packers, the Ravens, we'll get to the Bucks, that they're top of the league. They've been very successful. They're floundering, Bri. Okay, and this year, has there been some injuries? Sure, there's injuries everywhere, but not like it was last year or something like that. So you can't even lean on that as an excuse. Bri, they're losing close games. They're blowing leads.
Yeah.
That's a problem. They've blown 3 leads now in all 3 of their losses. Some of those were double digit. Actually, I think all 3 of them, if I'm not mistaken, were all double digit leads. Because even in this game, they had a 10-point lead at one point. That's not
Mhm.
good. And that is usually the sign of a very, very flawed team. And that is what I'm seeing right now. And I think the one that exemplifies it the most, at least the most recent one, is you have that whole issue with the handoff slash snap that happens in this game. Lamar, he scrambles out like he always does. He had no reason to throw that ball up there. He threw it up. There's 2 Giants in the area. It gets picked off. It leads to Giants points, turns the entire game on its head, and that was all she wrote. Those are mistakes that are uncharacteristic of Lamar and of the Ravens themselves. And we are seeing these more and more this season. And I am also concerned about this team. You have issues where I'm wondering who the hell is the number one wide receiver on this team? And do not say Mark Andrews, because yes, he's the number one passing option. But who is the number one wide receiver? Even in this game, Kenyon Drake, he ran it well for the limited times he had. I think, what did he have? He had something like 11.9 yards a carry. It's fantastic. And yet you only run him 10 times? Those are things that I'm confused about. I'm confused about what is going on in Baltimore. I mean, how have you viewed it? And what is your reasoning of why are they blowing double-digit leads? What is the issue?
Yeah, well, that is definitely concerning. You go back to that game; they had a huge lead against Miami, the game that Tua threw 6 touchdowns, and they rallied to win. That was an
28
inexcusable
points in the
loss.
fourth quarter.
They had the Bills on the ropes. That would have been a huge win. Instead,
Huge.
they let that one get away. So yeah, they've had games like that. I really think when I watch this team play, to me, as good as Lamar Jackson is, I think they're too reliant on him.
For
Like
sure.
I don't think they have enough talent in different spots. You mentioned the wide receivers. Is it Rashad Bateman? He's kind of in and out of the lineup. You got this Devin Duvernay. I mean, Mark Andrews is great, but you're shuffling running backs in all over the place. Dobbins, it always seems to have some physical issue. I think he got banged up in the game last week, and that forced Drake in, and he played well. But I just there just doesn't seem like there's enough there, and they're too, to me, relying on Lamar Jackson. Then you have a defense that's too there's too many holes in it, right? Like you can always pass on the
Yeah,
Ravens. Their secondary is very beatable.
for
This is
sure.
not Raven defenses of the old that really struck fear in you with Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and Haloti Nada. They've always had those kind of guys.
Absolutely.
This defense doesn't have enough of those guys. So I just think the intimidation factor with the Ravens is not there like it once was.
I, I think it's too like the names that you mentioned, but it's also some of the other names, right? Like a Matthew Judon. That was a big deal to be losing pieces like that. And he goes off to New England. Over time, over the last 4 or 5 years, they've lost a lot of those guys, right? Marcus Peters, he's been in and out of the lineup. They've not gotten out of Jimmy Smith what they've wanted when they drafted him. It's a very young secondary right now, led by a rookie safety. There's a lot of moving parts there, and they are very Lamar reliant. But also, Lamar is putting, I think, the start to the season he had was MVP caliber. And now he's kind of come
Yeah.
back to earth where I don't know if they've put even more on his plate or he's pressing or because he knows basically that's all they have. It might be a combination of both. And he's one of my favorite players in the league. I love watching him. I like John Harbaugh. I like what the Ravens normally represent. But remember, without one good drive by Lamar and of course the magic foot of Justin Tucker, they could be 2-4 right now if you look at that Bengals game that was played, right? So they've been very much teetering this season of a lot of the games they're in, blown. All three of the losses have been at one point they were leading by double digits. That's a concern. And I know they're still in the thick of it because, Cincinnati is, waffled on their own rights. Does anyone honestly trust the Steelers? I don't even care about last week. No. And then all the issues that have been going on with the Browns where they look great. They look like they were going to be 3-0. They blow it to the Jets and they've kind of come spiraling back to earth as well. And, we don't need to document more all the QB situation that has gone on there. So the division is still very much there. But if we're talking deep in the playoffs, if we're talking Chiefs Bills, do I think the Ravens can get to that level? Not right now. Not the way they're playing, and that's something that I want to keep an eye on going forward.
Yeah, I agree with you, and from our picks before the season, I had the Ravens going deep into the playoffs. I think I had them winning a game in Buffalo, and I agree with you. The way they're going right now, I cannot feel good about that pick.
Brian, I want to switch over to the Tampa Bay Pittsburgh game real quick. This is again, as I so eloquently teased, another one of those former powers. 2 years ago, Super Bowl champ in the Tampa Bay Bucks. They're also 3-3. They just got beat by a Steelers team, Brian, that the week before last week lost by 35 points. I mean, it's starting a rookie QB who got knocked out, and then Trubisky came in, and they still couldn't win. This is a running theme. Is it not a running theme right now of the Bucks scoring at the last second of games have to have a 2-point conversion to tie the game and failing, because I thought we saw that in the Packers game. So
Mhm.
this is becoming a running thing here with the Tampa Bay Bucks. And I'm not going to talk about people's personal life issues because I wouldn't want them to talk about mine. So that's none of my business with Brady. But I think on the sense I could talk about it from the football perspective, it's clearly affecting him. The injuries have
Yeah.
clearly affected him. He is not Brady. You could see it the way he was screaming at his offensive line. Yes, Brady's done that a million times. But in the past, I was like, okay, he's motivating them. That's Brady. He's a little psycho Tom. It kind of felt a little bit of, at least to me, a little bit of like desperation of like, man, I can feel us slipping away this season. And he kind of took it out on those guys who weren't doing a great job. They've had a lot of rotational pieces at receiver. Cole Beasley's in, then he retires again. And, Julio Jones has not stayed healthy as usual. And all the stuff that's gone on with Mike Evans and Godwin's always hurt. There's no Gronk anymore. There's no AB. I get that stuff, but you would think when you have Tom Bleep and Brady and a lot of talent, let's not pretend there's not a lot of talent here. The defense is one of the top in the league. I expected more. It's not like their schedule to this point has been a gauntlet and you're losing to a team like the Steelers. That just doesn't seem, it doesn't seem like we're going in a direction where I could feel comfortable with them being my Super Bowl pick right now. I mean, Brian, what do you say about the Tampa Bay Bucks?
Yeah, there's a lot that's gone wrong here. But one thing that I don't think is getting enough play with the Tampa Bay Bucks is the fact that they might be missing Bruce Arians.
Maybe.
Because, Todd Bowles, he saw him as a head coach with the Jets for a good number of seasons. And, certain guys this might be better coordinators and not necessarily fit to be head coaches. And Todd Bowles might not be a very good head
It
coach.
might be.
So I think that is something that is affecting them because Bruce Arians, wherever he's gone, the team's offense is always looking good.
Upstairs in the front office. Remember, he was on the
Yeah,
sideline the other week, and then they said he's not allowed to be there anymore. I mean, him and Brady clearly had some issues. That's why he's not the head coach anymore.
yeah. I mean that, and I get that, but I just wonder if there is a bit of a downgrade at that spot because Todd Bowles coaching an entire operation, he might be a great defensive coach, but as a head coach, he doesn't strike me as like a real leader. So I think that's something that could be going on there. Clearly, Brady, I think, is getting humbled a little bit for maybe the first
A little
time in
bit.
his career, honestly. The kind of the indecision of retiring, then coming back. I don't think it's sat well with anybody. I think even Brady, there's like kind of a miscommunication in his own head of, what to do with his life, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And I do think the off the field issues are playing into it. And you factor in some of the injuries that they've had on the offensive side of the ball. Some of their talented receivers been kind of in and out, but it's all added up to a team that does not look anywhere close to a Super Bowl contender. And out of the Packers and the Bucks, I know you say you're a little more concerned about Green Bay. I think
You're a
I
little
might
more.
be a little more concerned about the Bucks.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair to say that you're a little bit more concerned about them because listen, they've not played up to snuff, and if you look at it in some regards, they've played arguably some of the lesser competition. And to be out there and tied with the Atlanta Falcons at the top of the division, who at the moment they don't really have much of my respect, and we'll talk about them in a second, but still, props to Arthur Smith and what he's doing down there. But there is legitimate concerns here, and the personal life I think is bleeding in. I mean, listen, Brady right now, he could have been sitting at home. He has a lucrative deal after he's done for sports broadcasting, hundreds of
Yeah.
millions of dollars. It'd be a
Crazy.
dream of ours. He could easily be doing that right now, and he's not. And I get it. You love football, but there's a reason why you retired, and him flip flopping and pulling kind of that Brett Favre, very unlike Brady. It makes me
Yeah.
wonder, did he actually want to retire? And because it got leaked, he almost on spite wants to go out on his terms. So that's why he decided to come back. I mean, is it maybe something like that? Either way, it's not There's a recipe for disaster that is brewing here in Tampa Bay. Are they going to miss the playoffs? No. I'm sorry. That division is still putrid. But at the
Yeah.
same time, my Super Bowl pick, I'm not feeling that great about right now because there looks like there is a lot of holes, not even in the talent, where we talk about that kind of with the Packers or the Giants. It's more the mentality. It just doesn't
Mhm.
seem like the hunger, the will is there, and that, oh, you would never question that about Tom Brady. Now you have to. I think that's fair.
Absolutely.
Bri, if we switch over to another game, I want to talk about this one because it was one of the more hyped games we've had in a long time, right? Buffalo, Kansas City. Buffalo
Yeah.
knocks off the Chiefs 24-20. It's a, kind of rematch of the AFC amazing divisional round game. Could it be the potential matchup of this year's AFC championship game? Maybe, right? Kind of looks like that right now. But this
Mhm.
was a great game. It wasn't high scoring, but this was a great game. This is a game that I watched through and through, and I was actually thoroughly entertained by the kind of the chess pieces going back and forth. The Chiefs with quite a few injuries on their defense, still hanging in there, trying to, the Bills trying to figure out Patrick Mahomes. But at the end of the day, what did it come down to, Bri? As it almost always does. Patrick Mahomes, he throws a couple picks in this game. Particularly, I actually have problems with the first one, where he basically, I know Bucker's been in and out of the lineup. You see him make a 62-yard, then he misses a 51-yarder. I get it. But you have 3 points on basically a pretty short field goal in the back pocket of yours. And to throw that ball up to NVS in the end zone that ends up getting picked by Elam, that's a grave mistake. You don't throw a jump ball in that situation. And those 3 points ended up costing them down the line in later in the game where they have to play for the touchdown, not the field goal, and that's not counting the Bucker miss or the pick that ends the game that Mahomes throws. And that is not anything wrong at a question Patrick Mahomes. But those are the thin lines that are going to happen in matchups of juggernauts like this. And this time, Josh Allen gets the last laugh. I mean, Brian, how'd you look at the game when you saw it unfold?
Yeah, I agree. A great football game. I probably expected there to be more points
A little bit.
scored than there were, but sometimes games like that are even better to watch because, like you said, the
Yeah.
the chess match back and forth, and I think that's what we saw in this game. It wasn't just Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen completely lighting it up for 60 minutes. It was
Mm,
the defenses playing a role, and in the end, the Bills prevailing. Now, you go back to the playoff game last year, you would say the Bills should have had it. I mean, it took a miracle for the Chiefs
13
to win. It
seconds.
was just one of the nuttiest games ever. But the Bills, to me, with this kind of a win, prove that they are deserving of the hype that we heard all about going into the season. And I think there were a couple games as the season was going on. It was like maybe are the Bills not quite as good. There was that Miami game. They were down to Baltimore before coming back. But when you have a game like this where you go into Kansas City, hold their offense down a bit, and do enough, make enough winning plays to win, I think kind of cemented the Bills as a team that really is going to be a force to be reckoned with this January.
Yeah. Hey, a couple of weeks ago, about 2, 3 weeks ago, I threw out the stat that they were 0-7 in close games in the last couple of years. Close game against the Ravens, close game against Kansas City. They've come back and won both. Right. So you got to give them their props. You got to give them their dues. I will say, not to be a party pooper, but I have said this, and I still think it's a long-term concern with the Buffalo Bills. They need to still learn how to run the ball better. And I'm sorry, I understand Josh Allen is 260 pounds, whatever the hell. Is a giant man, right? Maybe the
Yeah,
biggest pound for pound man right now in terms of strength in the sport.
yeah.
Stop QB power running. Stop having this man do these amazing hurdles. I'm telling you, it takes one hit, one misstep, and your season is over. You need to stop putting your QB in that kind of harm. I don't care how big he is. We saw it with Big Ben. He was gigantic. He made all these was not as talented in the running end, sense, but escaping sacks, doing all these crazy things, taking hits, all that stuff, right? And it caught up with him. I understand QBs are more protected than ever, but they're not protected when they're a runner of the football. And that is something that I want to see this team improve more, where very much like the Ravens, stop making it all Josh Allen centric. Other guys in this offense need to step up, particularly in the run game. Otherwise, I don't think the Bills will be able to get over that hump of a Kansas City or of maybe another team. Maybe the Ravens get back on track, or anyone else that could get hot, the Bengals or anyone else. That is something that needs to be paid attention to. So I'm not trying to be a party pooper. I think the Bills right now are my number one team in the league. I think they've proven that.
Yeah.
But they still need a little bit more dynamic pieces for me on offense. Do you agree with that?
To some degree, I mean, I agree with the point about the running and not having to take hits, because that's the one thing that can derail this season is an injury to Josh Allen.
Don't
That's
need that.
obviously the last thing you can have. I mean, to me, in game, I feel like they can get by. I think they have complementary pieces. I don't think they have to be a running centric team. I love the wide receivers that they have.
I
I mean,
know.
Stephon Diggs, we know how good he is. Gabe Davis has become a great threat as a number two
I know.
and seems to be a Chiefs killer, right? Like he scored the 4
I know.
touchdowns last playoff game, had another big game here. Like to see them start to involve the tight end a little bit more. I think they got a
You
nice
saw that at the end
playmaker
of the
with
game.
Dawson Knox,
Yep.
and he had the big touchdown, the go-ahead touchdown late in the game. He's a big target who can be another kind of secondary receiver option in the middle of the field. So I think they have enough offensively. I think this is a dynamic offense, but I agree with you. Less having Josh Allen put himself into harm's way, the better.
And listen, if you're a Kansas City fan out there, don't panic. Your team is still excellent. Your division is definitely underperformed. Aside from the Chris Jones clearly tripping that should have been a penalty, your defense has really played well, and you're going to get more healthy on that side of the ball. I believe in Patrick Mahomes. I think this is going to be a rematch. I think this was a really entertaining game. It's going to be a rematch in the playoffs. I thought it was maybe top two best games for this last week in week 6. Bri, I want to talk about 2 more games real quick before we do our picks and get out of here. Let's go to the Sunday night game, because we got to give some love. We're giving some loves to local teams. Let's do that. Dallas Cowboys.
Love to the Philadelphia Eagles.
The love to the Philadelphia Eagles. You'll never see me say that about the Philadelphia Phillies, but I'm going to say about the Philadelphia Eagles. They knock off the Cowboys 26-17, right? In a game that wasn't even as really close as that. The Eagles are what, Bri? The only remaining undefeated team in this league at 6-0. And you know what? In my mind, it's not a false 6-0. Is their schedule impossible? No, it's pretty easy. But they are winning games. They're winning them impressively. I love the continued development of Jalen Hurts, of the running attack. I think on the first year on this show, and I think rightfully so, kind of shit all over Nick Sirianni, because we were wondering with the press conference, that hire, his lack of experience, what were they doing in Philadelphia? Well,
Yeah.
him turning over the play calling duties, the leadership that he's shown, the maturity, and kind of the confidence in himself to do something like that. I think he is, right now, he's checking all the boxes for head coach, where him and Brian Daboll are kind of 1 and 2 right now for me in coach of the year in terms of candidates right now. And you got to love what is going on in Philadelphia. This defense has played way better than I imagined it would. I knew the offense would have some firepower when they got A.J. Brown, and I like Devontae Smith still, and they got a stable of running backs, but this defense has played out of their mind. Could I ask, Bri? Could I ask you? Could they be the best secondary in the league right now? Because,
Yeah.
this secondary is like locked down, lights out. They knock your mouthpiece out when they hit you.
Yeah.
I got to love what I'm seeing from the Eagles. Do you see the same?
Well, I would say I think you're a little bit higher on them than I am.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you can't deny what they've done, and being undefeated is impressive. Do I necessarily look at them as a favorite to win the Super Bowl? And I'm not sure that you do either, but I feel like they are a little bit more vulnerable in different spots now that the defense has played great, and there are very few that secondaries that really make a difference in this league. The Eagles are one that, I mean, those 2 corners with Slay and with Bradbury are just playing
They're
outstanding.
locking it.
Yeah. One thing I would say for the Eagles is I feel like they're lacking a little bit of the killer instinct where they get
Okay.
a lead early and they're not necessarily
That is
able to,
fair.
to finish off, and win a blowout kind of game. Like this game on Sunday looked like it was going to be a total trouncing. And the Cowboys, say what you will, they kind of got back into this
They
game
hung around.
with Cooper Rush.
Cooper
So
Rush.
I, you know, I think the Eagles need to show me a little bit more. I mean, I think it's a good team. I don't necessarily think I put them as one of the teams that I feel really confident is going to make a big run. I still want to see more from Jalen Hurts, and I want to see them have more of that killer instinct where they can put teams away late and not let teams kind of hang around in these games. So that's kind of my
No,
takeaway.
I think that's completely fair. I think you actually nailed it because maybe you were looking at some of the statistics before the show. The Eagles have had a really rough second half offense. They just don't score points in the second half. In this game again, 6 points, scored 20 of their points in the second quarter. That's going to be an issue in the long run. You need to be able to put two halves together, especially in the second half. You need to be able to close teams out. So that killer instinct, think you 100% nailed that. We'll see what happens with them. Their schedule is pretty easy. The Cowboys on the other side, we don't have to talk too much about that. I still think they're a talented team. Their defense has been outstanding. I really like it there. I think, to quote Shannon Sharp, I think it was proven again that Cooper Rush is just a guy. I think all that QB controversy nonsense that we talked about a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
nonsense. It's
Mhm.
nonsense. Dak is by and far the better quarterback here. I don't care what anybody says. Now, we will see how healthy he is when he comes back here with the finger. Clearly was feeling a little bit of pressure, mostly done by Jerry Jones, in terms of having his job threatened. We'll see how that plays out now. I think ultimately the issue with the Cowboys is they need to make sure that they can continue to run the ball because this wide receiving crew, it's not only not that great, people like CeeDee Lamb have time and time again kind of been a letdown. So that's something I think to watch with the Cowboys. But who would have thought that three NFC East teams would be some of the top records in the entire conference?
And
I don't think we
that's
predicted
what
that.
that's what goes to show like predictions. They're predictions. They're often not going to be right because coming into the year, all the experts had the AFC West as this powerhouse division.
We
You
did
got a
too.
bunch of underachieving teams there, or teams that just aren't that good, quite frankly. And then you have the NFC East, which has been a laughing stock for years. And you got undefeated, you got one loss, you got two losses, you got the teams playing great. So I think for Dallas, it really works out perfectly that Cooper Rush stepped in. He did the
He
job,
did
right?
his
He,
job.
he was
He did.
winning games. He did the job. He lost this game last week, but now he loses, and now you get Dak back. So I think that kind of worked out perfectly. And they've got it, and we'll get to the picks. They got a game coming up here, a home game with Detroit. It's a good game for Dak to come back against a
You would think.
defense that's very forgiving. The offense should have its way. I mean, I talked about the receiving group, and the concerns that there were there. That to me, CeeDee Lamb had to prove he was a number one before
Not
you
yet.
could just say, "Oh yeah," and he hasn't done it. And so Gallup is back now, and he's a nice second receiver to have, but they just don't have a whole lot there. So I agree with you. The running game, which I'm more impressed with Tony Pollard than I am Ezekiel Elliott these days. I mean, I know
Absolutely.
Elliott kind of ran with a little more purpose than he has most games in the this game in Philly, but a lot of times we're seeing kind of a slow, old looking Ezekiel Elliott. And when
Yeah.
Pollard comes in,
Seen
you're
that for a few
seeing
years.
spry legs, chance for big plays. So I get it's kind of a 1-2 punch. I would use more of Pollard, frankly. I just think he gives this offense a lot of life. And with Dak coming back, like you said, he's got to be healthy. If he is, they've got the talent to compete, and it'll be a good race the rest of the way.
Yeah, the only question I'll make there is with Pollard, can he hold up? If he's a 20 carry a game kind of guy, can his body hold up? He's never done that before on a consistent
Yeah.
basis. So I think that's the question that the Cowboys as well have. They have a whole bunch of things going on with Jerry Jones off the field, Jerry Jones at the NFL meetings. I mean, there's always a Jerry Jones thing, but I feel now more than in the last few years it's really going on. So we'll see how the Cowboys hold up. They're always the most talked about team. I just think
Always.
this is why it's proven once again. This is why I do not bet, because look at how the seasons went. Look at the NFC East. This is why I do not waste my money betting. I just don't.
No,
Brian, the final
absolutely
game
not.
that I want to talk about in Week 6 was the final game of Week 6, which we don't do that often, but this spares some talking about. The Denver Broncos, they went to LA and they lost in overtime 19-16. And let's first take the obvious one. Let's talk about the Broncos, okay? Because there's something seriously wrong here. We're talking about, we have that panic button. Imagine there's a panic button here, audience, right? Are we pushing it with the Packers? Are we pushing it with the Bucks? We're pushing it with the Broncos. We are pushing the button.
Slamming it.
We are slamming the button. That's a perfect way to say it. There is something seriously wrong with this team. I don't know exactly what it is. I think it's a culmination of things. I don't think the head coach is that great. I think that's a whiff. I think Russell Wilson, and hey, I've kind of been saying this for going on 3 years now. He's not the same QB that he was, and that is getting more and more exposed. Let's stop with this. Oh, my shoulder here, my hamstring there. Stop. The QB play has been awful. Nothing short of awful. Like bottom 2 or 3 QB in the league right now. And there's a lot of talent on this team. This defense is playing out of their mind. I mean, the defense is playing so good. And this offense is disgusting to watch. I mean, it is horrible to watch. And we could say that even more, Bri, not because we own some subscription to some Denver network. Because the Broncos, as we said before the show, it seemed like they're on every freaking primetime game this season. So we have to be tortured with this, the San Francisco game. I mean, horrible games. Horrible games. I can't take it anymore, and I can't put my finger on one thing that is going wrong, because this team is 2-4. Bri, they could easily be 1-5 or 0-6. Think about it. They had a come from behind win against the Texans. The Texans at home in Denver. And then they beat the Niners in Jimmy G's first game starting this season by 1 point.
Yeah.
I mean, so their 2 wins are not even good. I mean, I got to turn it over to you before I keep going on with rambling anger. What's wrong with the Broncos?
A whole lot. I'm gonna put a decent amount on it on Nathaniel Hackett, the head coach, because right now it looks like he's in over his head. And maybe at some point he becomes a good head coach, but the early signs are a disaster.
Yeah.
I mean, it started in week 1. I talked about Brian Daboll setting the right message with his 2-point conversion and all the confidence that sparked as a result. With Nathaniel Hackett, you had a decision that was extremely questionable, to say the least, right from the get-go, where he opts for a bomb of a field goal over 60 yards rather than have Russell Wilson attempt a manageable 4th down play. So I just think they got really off on the wrong foot. And then you just look at this offense. It's just very discombobulated. They had a very talented, promising running back, Javonte Williams, season-ending injury. That's a huge blow. Yeah. And now it's like, what is going on with this backfield? Just look at the last game. Melvin Gordon starts. He gets a few carries. Next thing you know, he's on the sideline with his helmet off, doesn't see the field the rest of the game.
Right, and he's liking tweets on Twitter about getting traded. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's in my fantasy line. I think I was playing you last week.
Yeah, it hurts. It hurts.
But Latavius Murray all of a sudden is seeing a ton of action just coming up from the practice squad. So the backfield just has been a total mess. And then the explanation after the game, it's like, he didn't do anything wrong. We just didn't have enough plays. What does that even mean?
Yeah, the defense didn't give you more possessions. You need more.
Yeah, I just don't get it. And you're totally right. Like, this defense is playing out of its mind and just has to be exhausted because the offense is continually giving them nothing. And they're going out there and shutting down Justin Herbert and this Chargers offense. They're giving this team a chance to win games, and the offense is just shooting themselves in the foot. Yep. And there's really just no excuses. Like, he has good enough wide receivers. Where's Cortland Sutton? Where's Jerry Jeudy? I just been a total mess. The worst game of all was the Thursday nighter with Indianapolis, which
Please,
that was
please
just one
don't
of the worst
remind
games
me. Don't
you could
remind me of
possibly
that.
watch. And that's
Holy
kind of a theme
crud.
with the Thursday night games as a whole on this Amazon Prime. Hasn't gone well for poor Al Michaels, who's a legend of a
I feel so
broadcaster.
bad. I feel so bad for him, man. I really do.
The,
They probably sold him on like, yeah, you're gonna get Chiefs Chargers, and that's about it. Like,
yeah,
it's that's been rough going. It really has.
really has. And the Broncos, like you said, we've seen a lot of them. We saw them week one. They were on Monday night in
Please stop.
Seattle. We saw the prime
Please.
time game. We saw Monday night. This past Monday night, we saw the 49er game. That was Sunday night. So we see this team every week.
Yep.
We're very familiar with watching how poorly they
Unfortunately.
execute on offense.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So all I can say is the Jets go there this week. Hopefully, the Jets continue their mojo because this is a game that, frankly, looks like they should win
They
with how
should.
poorly Denver has played.
Yeah, Brian, I have two interesting stats, one for each quarterback. Can I interest you in Russell Wilson was 3 of 11 for 15 yards. 15 yards in the second half and overtime in this game. I
That was the total.
are we kidding? I mean, what I paid if I'm Denver with the new ownership there, I paid whatever 245 million dollars for that. Are you kidding me? That's a massive concern. Then you have on the other side, we'll dig into the Chargers here. All the talent they have, I understand they've had some injuries, Slater and Bosa. I get that. Everybody has injuries. Look at the Rams. Look at all these teams. To play the way they've played, where the other stat that I can use you in is that Justin Herbert threw over 50 times for about 250 yards, no touchdowns in a winning effort. Do you know that's never happened in the history of the league? No QB has ever thrown that many times for that little of yards and still won with no touchdowns. This game was an eyesore. It was very
Yeah,
difficult to watch. He's throwing
was
3 yards behind the line every play. Wilson can't even hit anybody. I mean, there is videos and pictures online. You can look them up. You can look them up, audience. There's guys right in front of Russell Wilson. They're right there. And
no.
he's remember the KJ Hamler touchdown that he missed a few weeks ago? He had it in this game too. Guys right in front of him, and he can't hit the open man. That's a serious problem. Even the ball that he had down the field, the long shot, the only long shot of the game, he underthrew it. It could have been a touchdown and ends up leading there to a field goal because, as the Broncos do, they get into the red zone and they're literally the worst red zone offense in the entire league. It's just, I look at both teams, and on the Chargers side, can we stop Brandon Staley? Can we stop going for it on fourth down? It does not
He's
work.
obsessed with it.
It does not work.
Obsessed with
I
it.
don't care what the analytics say. As people say, people way smarter than me, look at the flow of the game. If your QB's not playing well, if your team's not playing well, stop going for it, especially in your own territory. It's not going to work. So, two really bad coach football teams this past Monday night. Bad QB play. I felt bad for both those defenses, particularly the Broncos. This is going to be a long season, and for a division that you and I as well, we joined in on hyping up as maybe the greatest division ever. The Raiders are one of the worst teams, at least record-wise, in the league. The Broncos are probably the biggest disappointment in the league, them and the Cardinals. The Chargers, all right, yeah, you're sort of a winning-ish 500 record. You've not been impressive. And then you have the
No.
Chiefs, who are the Chiefs. And that's why we picked them still in first place. So I mean, before we get out of here and do our picks, do you have any final thoughts you want to say on the Chargers side of it? Because I think that's been equally disappointing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And there were concerns coming into the year. I think both you and I were a little bit down on this team when they were getting a tremendous amount of hype. But, I want to see more from Justin Herbert. This year hasn't been all that impressive for
Nah.
me watching him. And we know he's a great talent and he looks the part and he can make throws that some guys just can't make. But you got to be more consistent game in and game out than he's been this year. I just haven't really liked what I've seen there. I do like the fact that Austin Eckler has kind of become a star the last
Yeah,
couple
finally.
weeks. They
Yeah,
really, yeah,
where was he to start the season?
yeah,
Had to put out a
nowhere to be
bolo
found.
for him. You couldn't find him.
I know. And now he looks more like the Eckler that we've come to know and love, catching a ton of passes. He's really a fun player to watch at his
I love him.
size. And a great story, he was undrafted, played Division II college football, has become a real star in the league.
What about that touchdown that he had this past week? I mean, just the strength, the grown man strength to just get in the end zone. There's only a few guys that can do that.
Mhm. Overall, I just think with the Chargers, it comes down to inconsistency. The quarterback position, you look at like Mike Williams, right? Some games he
He's
just goes
there and he's
off. He
not
looks
there.
like a
Yep.
And then you look at Monday night, he has 2 catches for like 12 yards. So I just think
Killing
that's
my
kind of
fantasy
what
team.
this offense is. Like when you don't have Keenan Allen, he's like the one guy that kind of keeps it going, where you know what kind of production you're getting. Outside of that, you know what you're getting from Eckler, but these other receivers, Williams is hit or miss. They were targeting Palmer a bunch of times on Monday night.
Yep.
The tight end Gerald Everett. Oh, I just think the Chargers have a long way to go before I take them seriously.
Yeah, I mean, Herbert to have a long completion of only 24 yards with a cannon arm he has, only throwing for about a little less than 6.5 yards per throw that he had. The final stats here were 37 for 57 for 238 yards and a pick. I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible. I mean, like, and
Credit
they
uh, credit the kicker Dustin Hopkins for coming
absolutely.
up big with that injury.
Yeah, absolutely. To win the game there, to put all of us out here out of goddamn misery because this was another horrible primetime game to watch. We're about to switch over our picks and we're starting with the Thursday night game that's tonight. Please, for the love of God, give us an exciting game for once. And so that's the perfect intro here. Brian, we're switching over to week 7 picks. That was a lot
Yeah.
of fun talking about it. Guys, as always, if you have any thoughts on the past week and a couple weeks that we missed, and we do apologize for that, please let us know down below. We love to talk to you. Bryce, starting off picks. Week 7 is upon us. The New Orleans Saints tonight are going to the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals, probably them, the Raiders, Broncos, most disappointing teams in the league, right? A lot of rumors going on in the last couple days about Cliff Kingsbury maybe being on the hot seat even after he got his new extension. It's just looking that bad. Kyler Murray has looked bad. Well, his offseason rumblings, they just made a trade for Robbie Anderson because Hollywood Brown now is out with an injury. They're about to get D-Hop back for the first game this season tonight. So there is some optimism, but this defense has been putrid. The offense does not look great. A team in Seattle that gave up over 30 points a game defensively. Well, the Cardinals scored 9 points against them this past week. That's horrible. My pick, sadly, I must have been smoking that day. I picked this team to win the NFC West.
Yeah, I was
They're in
surprised.
the basement of the NFC West right now. It is looking bad, and maybe Diop can turn life around. You see the stats when he's there and when he's not there for Kyler Murray. And then on the other side with the Saints, they're sticking right now with Andy Dalton. They've had a lot of issues going on with Winston and out of lineup and hurt, and Taysom Hill. He was a Sean Payton guy. They use him. He's talented. He's not a QB. I mean, we've always been saying that. They got a lot of issues. I think their defense is kind of underperformed from the way that it was kind of a perennial top 10, top 5 defense in the last few years. Who are you taking in this game, Bry? Because I'm not feeling good about either pick.
Yeah, it's another game that I don't love going in, much
It's a
like the
Thursday night
last
game.
several weeks. Last week we had Washington and Chicago and that barn burner.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
so this one you got to figure will be better, but I don't feel great about either team. I mean, I'm picking Arizona because I'm a little more down on the Saints. The quarterback situation's been very uncertain. As far as I saw last, they didn't even know who was going to be starting until like game time. I guess you've heard. Is it Dalton tonight?
They seem to be leaning Dalton. That's what it says. I mean,
Okay.
I guess we won't see until they're actually on the field, but it seems to be leaning Dalton.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go with Arizona at home. Usually favor the home team, even though it hasn't gone that way the last couple weeks. But getting Hopkins back think will be a nice boost for Kyler Murray. Maybe we see him kind of bounce back here a little bit because it's been a rough go lately
Yeah,
for
to say the
Kyler
least.
Murray. One thing I would say about the Saints, all the hype coming into the year, I wondered if the experts mistakenly thought that like this Saints team had Drew Brees in his prime and Sean Payton was still coaching because I don't know what people saw with the Saints,
They
in
were
the
they were smoking it really when they did that.
it was like Dennis Allen, his previous head coaching record with the Raiders was dreadful.
Yeah.
And you thought he was going to be the answer here. So I really kind of puzzled me. But moral of the story, I'm taking Arizona. I figure the game will be close.
Yeah, I'm praying to God for a decent Thursday night game. God, don't even remind me about Washington, Chicago last week. That was another
Eye
painful game.
gouging.
Holy God! I mean, they're gonna have to start having Al Michaels have a magician or a juggler or something in the booth to keep that man entertained. I just feel bad. I hope the money was worth it. I really do, Al, because I'm never a man to talk about man's money, but oh my God, is this worth it? I'm taking Arizona as well. They're at home. They got the better QB. D Hop is back. I believe they're going to pull it out. I think, unfortunately, it's going to be not a great game. Maybe something like 2017, 2016, but I just don't think it's going to be a great game to watch, but it's got to be better than what we've had the last few Thursday nights or the last few prime times, to say the least. So I got to take Arizona. They're 2.5 point favorites right now, and I did look up, as confirmed 4 hours ago, Andy Dalton starting, Taysom Hill,
Okay.
QB3 active, Jameis Winston. It kind of sees where his career is going. We start on Sunday. Go to that. 1 o'clock games, Indy, Tennessee. Another one of these divisional matchups where, for the most part, Tennessee has won most of these games. But two teams sputtering. I don't care about the great comeback win for Indy last week. This team's not good either.
No.
I'm very torn on how this is going to go, but because this game is in Nashville, it's in Tennessee, and ultimately I think there's just more exciting pieces, and that's saying something, on Tennessee, more impactful pieces. I'm going to take the Titans to win this one.
I'm with you. I think what we've seen from the Colts is just a lot of uninspired football, I think is the best way to say it. The game last week, they pull it out. Matt Ryan has to drop back almost 60 times to win. I don't like what I've seen from the Colts. Even when they've won, they won that terrible game in Denver. They played miserable
Oh my
football and
God.
got a win. I don't like what I've seen all season from the Colts. Jonathan Taylor has seemingly regressed a little bit. So I'm taking Derrick Henry and the Titans.
And right now, he still looks like he's a game time decision. He's kind of been not really participating in practice. Jonathan Taylor, JT, the leading rusher of last year. I don't know if I see the regression necessarily in him. I see the offensive line regression. And just, dare I say, has Matt Ryan been a worse swap out for Carson Wentz? Because this offense looked better with Carson Wentz. And
Yeah.
I know he has his own issues and he's out now in Washington with a broken finger. But yeah, Indy's had a mess there in the last 3 years of rotating QBs. The Giants go to Jacksonville. So this will be an interesting game because I really liked how Jacksonville was at the start of the season. They've kind of returned to form, not in a good way. And then the Giants, they're 5-1. They should win this game. But it's games like this that are not like the thing that will convince me that they're good, because Jacksonville's not a good team. But these are trap games. And I want to see, with a not high-powered offense, can the Giants keep their focus? I believe they will. I believe they're going to win this game and win this. That's going to be the interesting thing that I'm going to pay attention to. So I'm taking the Giants right now. It shouldn't be close, but it probably will be close. And yeah, we'll probably see them get to 6-1, which is insane.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I gotta say, I know Las Vegas knows a lot more than I do. I am very
Jags
surprised
favored,
that
yeah.
they have the Giants as an underdog and the Jets as an underdog against
Mm-hmm.
teams that are just not very good. I mean, Jacksonville we have more respect for than Denver with the way this season has gone, but
Yeah,
I just feel like the Giants and Jets are not getting the national recognition
not
that,
yet. People
they're
are hesitant.
deserving of, frankly.
That's the truth. They're hesitant.
Yeah. But the Giants to me should not be an underdog in this game. It should be at the very least even. I cannot make Jacksonville a field goal favorite. The Giants have just found too many ways to win games. I think they'll do the same coming up.
Speaking of interesting Vegas lines, Tampa Bay goes to Carolina, right? And Tampa Bay is clearly the better team. I'm picking them to win this game.
Yeah.
11 points right now is where it's sitting at from what I see. I mean, these days, the way Tampa Bay's offense is played, as bad as Carolina is, that's a pretty big line. So that's interesting to see how that's going to go. I think Tampa Bay should win this easy. They should win by over 11 points. But the way they've played right now, I think this is kind of a real test for them because they should win, but they have to win handily to kind of get back on track. So this will be an interesting one that unfolds there in Carolina.
Yeah, and that line says to me more about Carolina than it does the Bucks. And
Yeah.
the shape that Carolina's in following the head coaching dismissal of Matt Rule.
Yes.
Baker Mayfield obviously played very poorly, but now he's not even in there. You got a backup in PJ
Injured-ish.
Walker.
Yeah.
So there, yeah, Christian McCaffrey's on the trading block all of a sudden. A lot of rumors
Robbie
about
Anderson out
Buffalo
the
as a
door.
great. Yeah. So I'm going Bucks. I think they figure it out this week, and the offense looks better, and they put up a crooked number.
Yeah, we didn't talk much about that and we don't have to talk about it much further. In the couple weeks that we've been gone, Matt Rule was, yes, he was dismissed as head coach of the Carolina Panthers. Everybody knew that was coming. There's been a lot of reports that David Tepper, the new owner there, was very upset with himself that he gave such a large 7-year contract to Rule. He's a good coach. Probably is more of a college fit. He really didn't have a QB chance there. He never really got his own guy. Went through a lot of top 3 picks, Darnold, Mayfield. They just haven't worked out. Mayfield's supposedly banged up right now. PJ Walker in there. It's been a mess in Carolina. We'll see what ends up happening. We saw Steve Wilkes take over the interim head coach there, and he ends up kind of getting the national spotlight this week as he kicked out Robbie Anderson out of the game. So the Panthers are a dumpster fire. It's going to be a long season for them. Packers, they'll go to Washington. Washington right now, without their QB, Wentz will not be playing in this game. I did not see, you can let me know, I did not see who is confirmed to be starting this game yet for Washington.
I believe Taylor Heineke.
It's Taylor, good old Taylor Heineke is coming back. Even though he's had some of his moments, even in the playoffs against Tampa, God, if the Packers do not win this game, I'm smashing that panic button next week's show. I'm taking Packers all the way.
You know, I was thinking about this when I just kind of had a last second change of
Don't
heart,
do
and
it.
I'm going Washington.
Don't do it.
Yeah, I feel like Taylor Heineke. We've seen him play pretty
He's
well.
had
Now
some
we've seen
moments.
him also have duds, but I think he's going to give them a little bit of a spark. And Washington at home can be
Oh, no.
dangerous, coming off a win, albeit it wasn't pretty their
Impressive.
last time out. The Packers a long way to go. I think this is a game that's going to be kind of a wake up call for them, and I'm taking Washington.
Man, Lambeau cheeseheads don't want to hear that. But man, I also, on a quick note, have not liked the way, and I love Ron Rivera, have not liked the way that's been handled. That situation where he basically threw Wentz under the bus a couple weeks ago. There's been a lot of kind of tension in that room. You have all the stuff going on with Daniel Snyder, and we saw a lot of that come out with the owners' meetings this week. Not a great place in Washington right now, so that's why I just can't pick them. Detroit goes to Dallas. The line in this game is 7 points. That might be a little bit too high because for the most part, besides the New England game, the Detroit has played bad defense, but they've put up points, and it's not like the Cowboys are lighting things on fire. I think the Cowboys will win this game. I think it will be a slow start to Dak coming back. You know, how well is he really going to be gripping that ball and having velocity on it? Probably more of a running game, but they should easily knock off Detroit. Probably the line is about a touchdown. That feels about right.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Cowboys. You know, the Lions, I think a lot of people fell into a trap with them last year where they had some feel good wins and you were seeing all this Dan Campbell stuff and it looked like he was really
Had
the
hard
guy
knocks.
to change this team around. And you know, a lot of people were like kind of the trendy sleeper coming into this year, and it just hasn't panned out, mostly because the defense has just been giving up tons of points. So I just think Dak coming back is going to be able to have his way with a very suspect, to say the least, defense.
Yeah.
Cowboys put up points. I think they bounce back from their second loss of the year and get a win on Sunday.
Totally agree. Falcons, interesting team, one of the most interesting teams in the league. Go to Cincinnati. I'm taking Cincinnati in this. I think the line at 6.5 is a little bit too high. I think the Bengals are still trying to figure themselves out. They're still kind of sputtering, even though they have found some moments. And the Falcons, they're very hit or miss for me, right? Because there's been impressive wins like beating San Francisco this past week. And then there's been some other games where I'm like, what are you doing? So I like what Arthur Smith is trying to build there. Mariota clearly is not going to be the long term answer, but he's played serviceable. And with some of these pieces here, I mean, God, it would actually be really interesting if Calvin Ridley was actually on this team, with his unfair suspension. So I like what I'm seeing right in Atlanta. I'm just not buying all in, especially against a team that just represented the AFC in the Super Bowl. I'm taking Cincinnati.
I'm taking Cincinnati as well. I agree with you on the Falcons. I think coming into the year, we thought this was one of the doormat teams in the league,
Absolutely.
and they're better than that. They've
They
shown,
are,
they got some pieces on offense. It'd be nice to get Kyle Pitts going. I mean,
right?
the weapon that he can be, and just hasn't really been much of a factor. But you got a nice, promising receiver in Drake London. Mariota's played probably better than you would have thought. Really, I think with the Falcons, it showed that the time was right to move on from Matt Ryan,
Yeah.
and I think
We're
they've
seeing
gotten
that
kind of
now
a spark.
even more.
Yeah, so Falcons look like they're in the right direction, but I think the Bengals and their offensive weapons. We saw Chase get on track. Last game had a huge game, the win at New Orleans.
Huge.
He's obviously, we know, is a legitimate number one receiver. T. Higgins back healthy now. I think they got the pieces here and the firepower to knock off Atlanta.
I also like Joe wearing that LSU Jamar Chase jersey back in the place where they won the national championship. I thought that was really cool. Cleveland goes to Baltimore. We touched on the Ravens a lot. We touched a little bit on Cleveland earlier. I'm taking the Ravens. This is a game that it's division. They've dominated in the past few years. You have to win this. The Ravens can't slip below 500. And the Browns, they started off really promising, and now a little bit of injuries and more a lack of talent at QB is really caught up with them. And ultimately, it's just not going to be enough. Even with all the issues Baltimore has, they're going to win this game.
Yeah, I'm taking the Ravens. I do have a feeling will be pretty close. I really could see it coming down at the end with the issues we talked about, the Ravens getting leads but letting them get away. I think the Browns will be able to hang around this game. I think it comes down to a late field goal by the great Justin Tucker. So if I were to pick it against the spread, I'd take Cleveland, but I'm taking Baltimore to win.
The 405 games are the Jets against Denver. I've seen anywhere from about a pick 'em game, kind of a half a point to a 1.5 point spread for the Broncos. A game where, I mean, before the season, we're chalking down Denver, easy dub. Remember, this team, not the way it's currently constructed. They beat your Jets 26-0 last year, right? So
Yeah.
that's what you expect. But right now, I'm going to put on that green and white cape and I'm taking the Jets. I do not like what I'm seeing in Denver until they can prove to me that they are not an absolute travesty on offense. The Jets, they don't have to do anything nuts. Run the ball, play good defense. The Broncos seem to not be able to score more than 15 or 16 points a game. I'm taking the New York Jets. Jets.
It sounds so strange because I'm
So
wondering how
weird.
many times that we have done the show
I know.
where have you actually picked the Jets to win. It has not been often.
No, it's not been.
Um, I'm taking the Jets too. I mean, look, you can't possibly, if you were to pick the Broncos right now, you couldn't possibly feel good about it.
No.
They would have to play so much better than they have recently to lead you anywhere in that direction. The Jets got the mojo going right now. They've
They're
won
feeling
three
it.
straight games. They've won at Pittsburgh. They've won at Green Bay. Those are two tough places to win. Now, Denver historically is a tough place to win too, and we know about how poorly the Jets were in the matchup last year. But now there's just no comparison with the way the two teams are playing. Gotta go Jets.
Yeah, I just feel like this is very much panic time here for the Broncos, and we'll talk more about that if it unfolds next week. But maybe a little bit of a revenge game for last season for Robert Saleh. I'm interested to see that. The Texans, they go visit the Las Vegas Raiders. Now the Raiders just coming off the bye. I expect them to win this game. I think the line at 7 points. I could see going either way. I could see it being very close. I could also see the Raiders blowing out the Texans. There's some moments I've liked Davis Mills. There's other moments I've not. I love
Yeah.
the young Gator rookie there in Pierce running the ball. He's been doing great. But right now, the Raiders, I know it's kind of cliche or stupid to say that, oh, could they be the best 1-4 team? Like if you're 1-4, you're there for a reason. But they've had a lot of close losses, and I think they're going to start turning it around at this point in the season after the bye. I'm picking them.
Yeah, a lot of close losses in games that they had big leads, and
Big
they
leads.
somehow let
Remember the
Arizona
Arizona
come
game? Yeah,
beat back. Yeah, so you go back to the game before the bye, they played a heck of a game in Kansas City, had a great
they
chance to
really
win. They
did.
were up 17-0, remember, in
Yeah,
that
they were
game.
dominating.
So I think this team has a lot of talent. I like them as a playoff team coming into the year. This is a game that you've got to win if you have any chance of turning your season
Have to.
around.
Have to.
So I'm going Raiders. Don't really know about the status of Devontae Adams following the shove there of that cameraman.
Yeah, that was
So,
not a good look. Is he going to get suspended? There's been some rumblings. I mean, who knows? But otherwise, I thought his apology was pretty lackluster, to be honest. Him just, writing on Twitter, hope you see this. Didn't really think that
yeah,
was a good look. And a guy that has historically has been a really good dude. I understand frustrations boil over, things happen, but you can't in this day and age, especially with all these cameras, you that can't happen. And you need to do better in your apology. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that.
yeah, but elsewise, the way they're running the ball, Josh Jacobs looks like a different player this year.
The last
This
the
looks
last
like a
2 or 3 weeks, he's looked like a different player. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like the way they're running the ball. Obviously, they've got weapons for Carr. Like I said, it's a game that if they're going to turn their season around, they got to win, and I'm taking Vegas.
The 425 games are Seattle first going to Los Angeles. They're going to play the Chargers. Seattle's been another one of these 3-3 teams that are right in the mix at the top of the NFC West. Who would have thought that? You would have thought they would have been one of the doormats. They've kind of done old fashioned football, run the ball. Love that rookie Kenneth Walker. Loved him in college. And
Yeah,
the defense has played really, really bad. But Geno Smith has made some plays. I mean, there's
amazing.
and they've kind of just gotten advantageous positions with their opponents, and they've made the key plays when they need to. And then on the flip side, as we just talked about, the Chargers have been extremely disappointing. That being said, I'm not a Seahawk believer. I believe the Chargers just have more talent. They're going to win this game. It will probably be ugly as hell. But if the Chargers can't get somewhat right and not have this game be ugly against one of the worst defenses in the league, we're going to be talking a lot about that next week. So I'm taking the Chargers.
No, I feel like sometimes when you do the picks, you got to take a chance now and then at
Taking the
something that's
chance.
either improbable. So I took one stab with Washington. I'm gonna go Seattle
All
here.
right.
Just for the reasons we talked about with the Chargers, the Seahawks have a good energy about them. We thought when the season started, this team was just gonna be dreadful. And you got to
Yeah,
give Pete Carroll credit. He's stuck around there, and Seattle is the team that comes out looking really smart following the Russell
they
Wilson
do.
trade. So, Geno Smith is playing the best football of his career. He's got good weapons to throw to. Going to take a shot at Seattle pulling off an upset here.
I'm more okay with you taking that shot than that Washington Packers. I think you're out of your mind. The final
We'll
425
see.
game is the Chiefs in San Francisco. And normally I'd be really excited about this game. I still kind of am excited about this game, but the Niners offense, I mean, they've been banged up all over the place. They've been one of the more injury prone teams in the league. Offensively, that has definitely been the case. Jimmy G has looked really, really bad. Probably due to the fact that his coach kind of gave him the cold shoulder, didn't give him a playbook, completely wrote him off, but kept him around. You knew this would be a situation that you could possibly be in. Trey Lance got hurt last year. And to do what they did to him, I thought was really, really dumb. It just wasn't smart. It felt more personal. And now you're playing Kansas City that they're just coming off a close loss against Buffalo. They want to have a kind of a get right game. This is a team in San Francisco that statistically their defense could hold up against Kansas City, but I think Kansas City's they're gonna get back on track here and prove once again we're the Chiefs, taking the Chiefs in this one. This is gonna be a good game.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a good game. Interesting to see like the dynamic of the Chiefs offense going against that 49er defense.
Yeah,
I could see the San Francisco defensive front giving Mahomes
for
trouble.
sure.
been kind of going back and forth on this one. I got the Chiefs right in that game against Tampa, which was one that was kind of questionable going in, and the Chiefs had probably their best game of the season that Sunday night in
Yeah,
Tampa. 49ers have been kind of Jekyll and Hyde, right? Is the
very.
best way to put it.
Lose to the
At their
Falcons,
best,
lose to the Bears.
right? At the best, I feel like they can beat anybody, and they're also capable of laying these studs like they did last week in Atlanta. Got a feeling though in the 49ers this
Yeah.
week. I
All right.
just think the Chiefs offense is going to continue to have games where they're not necessarily at their best. They'll have games where they explode with Mahomes, but I think this is one where they'll be held a little bit down, and I'm going to take the 49ers in company to get the win.
I just don't think Jimmy G can score enough points. That's kind of where I come down to. The Sunday night game is Pittsburgh Miami, which I don't expect to be a crazy game. I don't know if Tua is going to play. Is Bridgewater going to play? I think there's a lot of question marks right now at QB for Miami. They started off so hot. They were the talk of the league. Then they had these QB controversy issues, and now they've kind of fallen back to earth at 3-3. And then Pittsburgh, they're coming off a big win against Tampa Bay. They're still not a good football team. And I think Miami, pound for pound, will be able to control this game. It'll be low scoring, and I see them pulling off this win.
Yeah, we're back in agreement here. I mean, you can't like. I mean, the Steelers, like you said, are coming off a good win, but the quarterback situation, I don't like when it's in flux like that, where it's like, okay, now it's Pickett's time, then he gets hurt. You go back to Trubisky, he actually plays well. Now it's back to Pickett, so I don't like
Yeah.
this yo-yoing at the quarterback spot. And I just think the Dolphins are going to be really fired up with Tua coming back. I mean that situation, which you were on. I think it was the last time we recorded, and
Yeah.
you proved to be dead on the money when he goes out and has that horrible play, and you just wonder what was going to happen. Just thankfully, it only takes a few weeks for him to get back on the field. But I think the time off does him really well. Tyreek Hill has had a huge year leading the league in receiving, showing that he doesn't need Mahomes to be an elite wide receiver. He is regardless of quarterback. I think the Dolphins are a pretty good team. Will take advantage of the Steelers and win this one.
Yeah, I saw the stuff about Tua. I'm still not 100% convinced that come game time, sometimes you see setbacks with concussions. I'm not 100% convinced that he's going to be out there. He probably will be, but we'll have to see what happens there. And he talked about changing his style of QB play to better protect himself. Easier said than done when you're out there in the fire. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Hopefully, nothing like it was. The
Yeah.
final game is the Monday night game. It's probably not going to be a good one. It's Chicago on primetime for some reason, again, against the New England Patriots. We talked about a little bit of QB controversies that shouldn't be QB controversies that actually should be ones. I think that falls in this category. Dare I say, Billy Zappi better than Mac Jones? I mean, there might be some questions brewing here, Bry, up in New England, because the way Mac Jones was playing before the injury, the way Billy's playing now, I think those are some legitimate question marks. The defense seems to be playing better for New England. I see them winning this game. The Bears are just a travesty. I mean, they are horrible to watch. I feel so bad for Justin Fields. I really do. They are just they're not helping him progress and grow as a passer. He has maybe the worst wide receiver core in the entire league. I mean, and the
Yeah.
offensive line isn't good. The running backs are not fantastic. Like it is really rough watching them. So I see the Patriots to win this one. It'll be an old-fashioned defensive running the ball game, and Patriots will pull it out.
Yeah, the Patriots have kind of impressed me the last couple weeks
Okay.
of the way they played. And the year started, and they had that dud in Miami, and it just looked like it was going to be a long year. But it just shows as long as Bill Belichick is
Coaching.
there, he'll keep this team afloat, regardless of the personnel. And I agree on the quarterback situation, just because Mac Jones, he hasn't proven enough yet to where he's the guy.
No.
And Zappy comes in, he's winning games. The one game they didn't win in Green Bay, they took to overtime.
Played pretty well.
So, the Patriots can rely on their running game. We know they don't have great pass catchers, but this Ramondre Stevenson has kind of come alive the last couple weeks.
Yep.
Damian Harris get back in the lineup, so they can run the ball, kind of play that smash mouth style. And the Bears, like you said, they're just overmatched offensively. They're just a bad watch because they can't move the ball.
No.
Like I said, you feel bad for Fields. He doesn't have weapons. He doesn't have good coaching. It's just not a very good team. And so I think the Patriots will win this one easily in a game that I agree with you won't be all that exciting to
And in
watch.
classic fashion, right? Eberflus has the defense playing really well. He's a former defensive coordinator. But that's what Chicago is, right? Great defense, really bad offense, and in this league, you need some kind of competency on offense if you want to compete. It's just how the rules are all rigged for offense now. It's just how it is. But guys, that's gonna wrap up our show here, covering some of week 6 and some of the past weeks of the NFL season here in 2022, and doing our week 7 picks. If you've listened through an hour about now, thank you so much. We greatly appreciate that. As always, timestamps are down below in the description, so you could skip around to things that you want to hear us talk about, or particular games, favorite teams that you want to hear us talk about. All our socials are down below. All our links to things are down below. This channel as well here on Clueless Gamers. I do a lot of other content. If you're interested in any kind of TV show or movie-related entertainment, check that out. I would greatly appreciate it. Bry is also a great follow on Twitter as well, so please follow him. He talks a lot about great football and baseball stuff. You can get a lot of knowledge out of here. He also does a baseball podcast when that is going on as well. Follow that. You can find all those links there on his Twitter and his other socials. Bry, I want to thank you so much for joining me. I greatly appreciate it. It's another fun week, and I can't wait to do it next week.
Yeah, let's do it. We got live football starting in about, 15 minutes or so.
Hope for a good game. Please give us a good Thursday night game. But guys, thank you so much once again. Like the video, subscribe channel, share with your friends if you be so kind. And until next week for First and 10, thanks for watching.